We all know that Marines can't drive in Halo. We know not to let the AI teammates drive in Halo campaigns because they always make some questionable decisions. So most of the time we take it upon ourselves to be the drivers in the campaign. However, I decided to see how well the AI would be at driving in the Halo 3 campaign. I played on Heroic just to add an extra dose of challenge. I thought Legendary would have been too much, and I think after you watch this video, you would agree. The first two levels in Halo 3 have no vehicles, so we're going to start off in the third level, Tazvo Highway. From the start, things were already rough. I was trying to give the passenger Marine a battle rifle, but every time I gave it to him, he would go to the driver's seat, so I ended up giving the battle rifle to both of them. This will be a reoccurring issue, trying to give Marines weapons and having them go into the driver's seat instead of the passenger seat. Once we finally exited the tunnel, things weren't so bad. We had other Warthogs behind us, and we drove through a few squads of enemies, but it wasn't until we got to the first open area with tons of enemies that it started to get difficult. Our driver's first mistake was getting right between two shade turrets and jackal snipers, and so our passenger died. Luckily, I was able to kill the enemies inside the shade turrets, and the jackals were distracted by the other Warthog. A new Marine got into the passenger seat, and we finally ended up driving out of that area and into the next section with brute choppers. The combination of brute choppers, brutes, and a shade turret proved to make this section slightly more difficult. I only died twice in this section, but a Marine jumped into a brute chopper, and I gave another Marine a beam rifle to deal more damage, so at that point we were fine even with the drones that came out of the shield. Once we passed this area, we got to the broken bridge that's supposed to force you out of your vehicles, but because I brought a grav lift, I was able to bring a Warthog to the other side. However, since the game doesn't expect you to bring a vehicle and only come on foot, none of the Marines got on. Thus, we had to fight through a couple waves of enemies. Once we were able to fight through the waves, a Warthog was dropped down, and I gave the Marine passenger the fuel rod. Despite there being at least 4 choppers and 2 shade turrets, the passenger was doing really well taking out enemies, and it made this section relatively easy to get through. However, it was not until we got through the tunnel where the real pain began, and where most of my time in this level was spent. There were numerous choppers and 3 wraiths, making this section very difficult. One of the main issues with Marines that drive is that they could kind of get stuck, and sometimes they don't have the awareness that wraiths are arcing their shots at us. We did not have any huge issues until our driver died, and then the passenger with the fuel rod had to take the driver's seat. So we lost a huge advantage, and now I have to deal all the damage. After we got rid of most of the choppers, it was time to take out the wraiths. The first 2 wraiths we got to were pretty easy for the most part. One of them got so scared that it drove off one time. But then my driver also got scared and he drove off as well. Eventually, we got to a checkpoint after destroying the second wraith, and the most annoying thing happened. The driver would just drive to this one spot and park for a few seconds and then start driving again. And he would do this every single time we restarted the checkpoint. And at this point, the Marine was showing how much he cheated on his driver's test because he was awful. Around the same spot a few times, he would just slow down for no reason, giving the Wraith an easy shot at us. I admit the final Wraith wasn't a tough spot. It was on top of a hill, so you couldn't get a clear shot unless you got really close. However, it always seemed like my driver was just too afraid to get close and then drive off. After several retries though, the driver finally pushed forward and took me close to the Wraith, and I was able to destroy it. At that point, the level was basically over. We drove to where there were jetpack brutes, but they were easy to take out, and the level was done. Not a bad start though, but at the next level, you will see how bad these Marines are at driving. The 4th mission, the Storm, was the next vehicle level, and if you know it's coming, you know it's gonna get really frustrating. The first open area to the level, there were regular squads of enemies, banshees, ghosts, a wraith, and an anti-air wraith. One of the main issues here was the driver would always just park at this one spot and not move very much. Admittedly, this did help with having a clear shot at the wraiths, which you need to destroy to move on. However, since we were parked, we just got bombarded by enemy vehicles. On the final try though, the driver parked perfectly where I was able to take out the regular wraith from afar. However, that spot did not give me a clear shot to the anti-air wraith, so I had to push the Warthog myself. I guess the driver didn't really like it that much, so he crashed us into a crate, but we were able to destroy the anti-air wraith to move on. After that, we had to get out of our vehicles to fight the Covenant indoors. After the indoor skirmish, we all got into mongooses to take out the rest of the anti-air wraiths. Because I was no longer on a turret with unlimited ammo, I had to be very careful with my rocket launcher shots. I started off with 8 rockets, I used 2 shots on one wraith, I missed 1 shot on chopper, and then the other to destroy the chopper, and then I used another to take out the last wraith. I tried my best not to use my rockets on the ghosts and let the other marines handle them. After the last wraith was destroyed, there were some banshees and ghosts left over. The banshees were annoying since I only had limited rockets, so I would need a perfect shot. The driver drove us back and forth in his tube for some reason, but I do admit that it did provide some cover from the banshees, so I don't want to call the driver totally dumb, for now. And then I did a trick shot where I purposely missed the banshee I was originally aiming at to hit the banshee behind it. And then the most frustrating part of the level had started. The Scarab joined the battlefield. The key to destroying the Scarab in this level usually is getting a missile pod or driving an AI teammate with the rocket launcher to take out one of the Scarab legs and then destroy its core. However, since I was testing the Marines' driving skills, those options could not be used. One issue is that every time I died and the checkpoint restarted, I had to get over to the other Marines and kill them for their rocket launcher ammo since I only had 1 rocket left. The Scarab's legs take multiple shots for it to get taken down, so I had to be really accurate with my shots. Another issue is that the driver would most of the time position us right in front of the Scarab, which allows its main guns to shoot at us and kill us. Or they would drive too close to the legs and we would die. Or they would get stuck in the dumbest way possible and we would die. Or they would literally just drive us off the cliff and we would die. To be fair, not all the deaths were my driver's fault. Let's not bully him too much. If I took too long to kill the Marines for their rocket launcher ammo, the Scarab would have enough time to reposition itself to shoot me with its main guns. And then other times my shots just would have no effect on the Scarab legs, so I would have to just give up and restart the checkpoint since I would have no ammo left. But definitely, most of the deaths were the Marines' faults. I was literally fuming by the end of this level. I do so much damage and get so close to taking down the Scarab just for the Marine to somehow cause our deaths. But eventually, after a very long and frustrating 50 minutes, we were finally able to take down the Scarab. I used my very last shot to take out one of its legs, cleared out the enemies, and then destroyed its core. I was so very relieved after I got this done. But sadly, there were a couple more Scarab fights left in the upcoming levels. In the next level, the Ark, the level starts off with you with the sniper rifle, having to take out groups of enemies, but let's just fast forward to where the vehicles are, and you get to this area with the crashed Pelican. After you move forward to progress, 2 Prowlers show up, but they can easily be taken out with the rocket launcher. The Prowler can carry someone on the turret, 2 passengers, and a driver. I had 1 passenger with the BR and 1 with the sniper rifle, so I thought our firepower was pretty good. However, our driver wasn't that good. We also had 2 Marines on 2 mongooses, which only served as distractions since they didn't have passengers who could shoot. This next area with the ghosts and choppers really wasn't an issue. Surprisingly, none of my passengers were killed, even though we took a lot of damage from other vehicles. However, the next area was not so forgiving. To move forward in this level, you're supposed to make this right so you can clear out the anti-air wraiths to move forward for the Forward Unto Dawn to land. However, the AI that's driving thinks you have to clear out this area first before progressing. Either way though, this section includes not only choppers, but shade turrets, and worst of all, grunts with fuel rod guns. That combination made this section absolutely horrible to play through. The choppers weren't really the main issue here, they were just a distraction. However, once you clear them out and fight the grunts with the fuel rod guns, you're at a huge disadvantage because the grunts have the high ground. And sometimes that scares the driver so much that she just froze in her seat while the grunt shot at us, or she would just accept defeat and just drive straight into them. Even the Marines and the mongooses weren't so lucky. She did sometimes have some clean dodges, but those were pretty rare. Even after getting through the grunts with the fuel rods, we still had to finish off the rest of the enemies at the end of the bridge, which was still pretty difficult. There were a bunch of brutes and 2 shade turrets that could take us out so fast, but of course, the driver wanted to go in head on. After about 20 minutes, we were finally able to complete this section and proceed with the level. The landing zone with the anti-air wraiths surprisingly did not take forever. It was definitely hard since there were multiple wraiths, ghosts, shade turrets, and enemies with fuel rods, but this time, the grunts did not have the high ground. Luckily, I got a checkpoint after destroying the first wraith, so I only needed to destroy the next 2 anti-air wraiths. Also luckily, the anti-air wraiths were distracted for most of the fights, so they were usually facing away from us. After a few tries, we were eventually able to clear out this area for the Forward Unto Dawn land. Next up was to get on the gunner seat for the Scorpion tank. My sniper in the passenger seat from the Prowler actually joined us again, and then we had a Marine with an assault rifle and another Marine with the fuel rod. So you'd think with all this extra firepower and a freaking tank that we would have no issue progressing through the rest of the level, right? And you'd be kind of right. We still had issues where the driver would just stay still as the wraiths showered upon us to our deaths, but since we had multiple scorpions, we were able to take out the wraiths from afar and push forward after a few tries. And then came the epic showdown against the Scarab and a bunch of wraiths, choppers, ghosts, and other enemies. Luckily this time we had the Gauss Warthog. This turret makes mowing down vehicles very easy. This driver did have some weird moments where he would just drive straight into these rocks, and other moments where he wanted to catch the wraith's mortar shots. But soon we were able to get to the Scarab and take the fight head on. Since I no longer had very limited ammo like in the last Scarab fight, this fight with the Scarab did not take so long. The driver did have some huge lapses in judgment sometimes where he would just stay still and let us die. However, since the Gauss turret is so powerful and accurate, I was able to damage the Scarab's legs enough to get to the core, but then a chopper ran me over. Eventually though, the next time I took out one of his legs, I had to fight through some enemies, and I definitely rushed it a bit too much because I almost died, but luckily we did not get killed and were able to get to the core and destroy it, and then watch some beautiful fireworks at the end. And that concluded the vehicle section of this level. On to the next level, the Covenant. It starts off pretty standard. First you fight through some enemies to destroy an anti-air wraith, so a Pelican could come in and drop off a Warthog. I gave the passenger a fuel rod gun so we had some pretty good firepower. However, I regretted it since the first enemies we came against were Banshees, so the Spartan Laser was probably the best choice to give to the Marine. Since the checkpoint spawned us back to where we were, already driving towards the Banshees, it was hard to switch the weapons with the Marine without us getting shot at, so eventually I just gave up on that. What the driver should have done was to just hang back while I took them out from afar, instead of just driving head first into the Banshees since obviously we had more range with the Warthog turret. This didn't take too many tries to finally get past them, so we were able to move up to the next area with the Wraith, Prowlers, Ghosts, and multiple types of enemies. We actually didn't die too many times from the Wraith, but mostly from cleaning up the rest of the enemies after destroying the Wraith. The driver would just slow down too much between all the enemies shooting at us, so we would get killed easily. Also a few times the driver would just drive straight to this rock while all the enemies were just swarming us. I guess it was the same driver from the last level. Soon though, the passenger was able to get some pretty good shots with his fuel rod gun, and we were able to get to the next checkpoint. Next, we had to get out of the Warthog to clear out the tower and deactivate the shield, so we can just fast forward all this. When we got past that, we got back into the Warthog and drove back to the beach to the Hornets. I tried so very hard to be the passenger for the Hornet. However, no matter how hard I tried, even when I managed to get a Marine into the pilot seat, they never proceeded forward into the mission and would just land back to shore. I tried landing on another Hornet, but sometimes it led to that. And then when we were all flying towards the battle, I tried landing on the other Hornet again, but they would just not move forward. It seemed like the Hornet won't move forward unless I'm in a Hornet moving forward too. So I just had to move along the level normally with me as the pilot. We landed, fought through the tower again, came back down, and this time I had an elite as my driver. Did the Covenant have a better driver than the UNSC? No, not really. Luckily, he did have a shield, so he was able to take more damage than a typical Marine. And the fact that we were in the Goshawk helped us out, especially since we had no one in the passenger. We did not die too many times here, so we were able to get to the ultimate fight with the two Scarabs. Then I encountered probably the best Marine driver / pilot in this game. I got into the passenger seat of the Hornet and he immediately flew me to where the Scarab was going to land so I can jump onto the Scarab and destroy its core. It was amazing. He did not spend any time just hovering around doing nothing. He just flew right to where the Scarab was and I was able to jump down. However, the next step was destroying the second Scarab. The pilot did not come back down to pick me up again since he was busy fighting, so I needed a way to damage one of the Scarab's legs. I saw a Goshawk driving around, so I had to get to the turret. The issue is that there were numerous enemies shooting at me, including the Scarab, so I had to constantly dodge shots and vehicles as I was approaching the Hog. Unfortunately, the driver was not as smart like the pilot in the Hornet. A couple of times this driver drove right into the debris of the already destroyed Scarab. Even when I unstuck us, he did the same exact thing. We almost died by the Scarab, but luckily the Scarab actually unstuck us. Then I was able to get more shots in and came very close to stunning the Scarab. Unfortunately, the driver drove right back into the destroyed Scarab and stuck us again. Thankfully, I actually had an opening and was able to shoot one of the legs from that position. And then, since the Marine was just stuck, I had to walk myself all the way to the Scarab to destroy its core. And then, as I got out, I saw a Marine and a Ghost trying to kill the brute on the plasma turret on that Scarab, which was about to explode. At least, he was able to go out in a glorious explosion. In the last level, Halo, I tried to get the Arbiter to be the driver in the very last part, but I don't think the developers ever coded for him to be the driver. I tried taking out the Arbiter from the passenger seat so that maybe when he would get back up, he would go into the driver's seat, but literally anything I tried would not work. He would never get into the driver's seat. So we played through every vehicle level in the Halo 3 campaign, trying to see the driving skills from the Marines, and as we all saw, they were pretty mediocre. We got through most of the driving sections with an AI driver, however, it did cost a bit of our sanity and hope. In the end though, I thought it was a fun experiment to see the pros and cons of having a Marine to be the driver for once. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all next time.